Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
When I first stepped into Victor's parents' house, I remember thinking how the air felt heavier inside, as though the walls themselves whispered judgment. Victor's mother, Octavia, stood at the door, wrapped in a silk scarf, her Channel perfume so thick it nearly burned my throat. She didn't hug me. She scanned me, head to toe, like a jeweler inspecting a counterfeit stone. "Oh," she said finally, lips curling. "I thought you'd be taller." Before I could respond, Victor's father Carson extended his hand, dry and stiff. His grip lingered just long enough to feel like a transaction. "So Darcy," he said, pity coating his voice, "you didn't go to college." "I had bills to pay at 18, I replied evenly. "I chose work." Octavia's painted brows lifted as if work was a vulgar word. Behind them, Stephen, Victor's older brother, leaned lazily against the doorway, smirking. "Grunt work builds character," he said with a mock chuckle. "I suppose you've got plenty of it." Victor stiffened beside me. "That's enough, Stephen." But his voice lacked force, and I noticed the way he dropped my hand a second too soon. From that first day, the pattern repeated itself. Each visit carried its share of small humiliations. Octavia wrinkling her nose at the store-brand coffee I brought, Carson sighing dramatically whenever my salary was mentioned, Stephen's sly questions about whether I'd ever thought about doing something important. One evening, I caught Octavia rifling through my dresser drawers under the excuse of looking for a napkin. She pulled out my worn bank ledger, thumbed through the pages, and shook her head. "So little savings, no portfolio," she murmured, loud enough for Victor to hear. "You should have married someone with at least a financial plan." Victor laughed awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Mom, please." But he didn't stop her. And that was the beginning. Every holiday after, I cooked, cleaned, and poured wine, desperate to prove my place. And yet, with every carefully chosen pastry Octavia brought just for Victor, with every smug smirk from Stephen, with every sigh from Carson, the truth pressed harder against me. 9 years passed, and I never became a member of their family. I was a tolerated mistake, an outsider seated at their table, waiting for a knife I couldn't yet see coming. Sunday evening, Octavia's summons brought us to the long oak table gleaming beneath the chandelier. Crystal glasses sparkled, forks aligned in military precision. It wasn't dinner, it was theater, and I was the unwilling actress. She appeared from the kitchen with a tray of steaks, thick and seared, rosemary and butter wafting through the room. One by one she set plates before Carson, Stephen, Victor, and then passed me by. I waited, forcing a smile. Surely a mistake. Minutes later came dessert, creme brulee in porcelain dishes, caramel crust shining like amber. Again, everyone was served except me. Silence hung like smoke. Carson broke it first. Perfectly cooked, Octavia. He sliced into his steak, juices bleeding across porcelain. Stephen smirked, spoon striking sugar. "Exquisite as always, mother." My own plate sat empty, reflecting the chandelier's cold glow. Victor hesitated, eyes flicking from me to his portion. For a moment I thought he might protest. Instead he bowed his head. "Thanks, Mom. It's delicious." Each bite they took echoed like a hammer. My chest tightened. Finally, I spoke. "Octavia, I think you forgot mine." She turned, lips curving in a slow smile. "Did I? Oh, I assumed you were. Watching your figure." Stephen's laugh cut the air. Carson lifted his glass in silent approval. Victor said nothing. The clink of cutlery continued, deliberate, cruel. My throat burned as I forced myself to sit still, every nerve urging me to leave, to scream. That evening I understood something sharp and final. Silence is not neutral. It is betrayal. And Victor continued to betray me throughout those 9 years. The silence from that dinner festered like a wound. By the following week, the tension in Victor's family house had thickened into something almost tangible. Every glance carried an unspoken accusation, every gesture sharpened into ritual cruelty. I knew I could not endure another evening of humiliation. If Octavia had turned her cruelty into a weapon, then I would turn her theater into her downfall. The next Sunday, I came resolutely determined. The family gathered again. Octavia's smile was lacquered and false as she laid the table with silver, her movements smooth, rehearsed. When the platters appeared, steaks, desserts, all arrayed like offerings. I waited. Predictably, every plate found its recipient except mine. This time, I did not smile. "Octavia," I said clearly, my voice slicing through the air. "Why do you never serve me?" Her pause was fractional, but her eyes glittered. "Perhaps because you don't belong at this table." The words fell heavy, echoing in the stunned silence. Carson's fork froze mid-air. Stephen's smirk widened, but I leaned forward, pressing, "Say it again." Victor shifted uncomfortably, his knuckles pale against his glass. Octavia's tone sharpened. "You were never one of us. You are an inconvenience, a shadow clinging to my son." "This isn't about steak or desserts," I said, my voice shaking but steady. "It's about every side glance, every backhanded remark, every time you rifled through my drawers searching for proof that I wasn't good enough." Victor's eyes flickered, his lips tightening. He expected my voice to break, for me to fold into silence. But silence had been my cage, and I was finished with its bars. Carson scoffed. Stephen smirked. Octavia laughed her brittle, glass-shattering laugh. But I turned to Victor, and tore away the mask he had worn too long. "Tell them, Victor. Tell them what you've been hiding." He froze. My heart hammered. "Tell them you haven't worked in nearly a year. That you were fired after miscalculations cost your company millions. Tell them who has been paying the rent, the bills, the groceries, the food on their plates, who has truly held this house together. Tell them who has carried this marriage while you pretended to go to work each morning." The table stilled. Even Octavia's laughter faltered. Victor's fork clattered against porcelain. From my bag, I pulled a manila folder and laid it in front of Victor with deliberate calm. "Draft separation papers. I've spoken to an attorney. I don't need your permission anymore." And in the silence that followed, deafening vast, I felt the axis shift. I was no longer the guest at their table. I was the hand that had toppled their kingdom. The days blurred into paperwork and whispers. I filed for divorce, accepted a promotion, regional finance coordinator, with relocation on the horizon. Victor unraveled. His arrogance collapsed into excuses and drinking. He called late at night, voice ragged. "Don't throw away 9 years over one lunch." But it wasn't one lunch. It was a lifetime of silence, a theater where he had watched me bruised by words and never once stepped onto the stage. And as he sank, so too did Octavia and Carson. The tale of the steak incident traveled like smoke through family branches. Laughter turned to shame, invitations thinned, cousins whispered behind closed doors. Stephen, once smug in his superiority, now wore pity like an unwanted cloak. They had wanted to humiliate me. Instead, they exposed themselves. Their empire had collapsed by their own hand. One evening, Victor leaned against the guest room doorframe, eyes rimmed with red. "We can fix this," he murmured. I looked at him, truly looked, and saw a man who had forfeited love through inaction. "No." I whispered, "I can, you cannot." His shoulders collapsed, and he left silently. And for the first time in years, I slept in silence that didn't feel like punishment. It stretched its arms like peace itself. Their kingdom was rubble, but in the ruins I finally stood unafraid. When the divorce was finalized, I didn't celebrate. I ordered takeout, curled up beneath a blanket, and let silence wash through the new apartment. Octavia sent an email filled with hollow apologies. "I'm sorry if you were hurt." Carson never said a word. Stephen posted champagne nights, pretending nothing had changed. And Victor called only once. His voice trembled. "I should have defended you. I should have stood up." I glanced at the basil plant on the sill, its leaves waning yet still alive. "You had 9 years," I said quietly. 9 years of silence, and I will not return to silence again. I set down the phone. The quiet that followed wasn't the suffocating void they had forced upon me for nearly a decade. It was mine, my freedom. Proof that even after betrayal and humiliation, after being told I was never family, I had carved out a life where I finally belonged, if only to myself. And that was enough.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.